sort of cosmic pointers rather than anything of any greater substance than that. But nonetheless, here it is again, MM.
So, I mean, there's lots of M's, as it were, out there. I know you had a posting about this a while back.
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Madonna, all of this still, ongoing. And one thing you pointed out also, of course, was interesting that I hadn't think of earlier was that even MM, of course, becomes 2000 in Roman numerals. Millennium.
Yeah, absolutely.
Have a lot of it about this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and talking about 2000, of course, that takes us back sort of to the whole dome over there at Greenwich, which again in this strange, I suppose, if I'm going to use a lazy shorthand, in this synchromystical way, I sense all of these things as being deeply connected, and it's a pretty large canvas I'm trying to paint with my articles now over the last month and increasingly over the next 2 or 3 months. And I'm hoping I can pull it off, and I'm pretty sure I can. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And I think it's a very big picture.
Yeah, it seems to be because, as you say, if you're, careful or enough, you can see the thread, I think, in a way, and kind of hints, as it were, are popping up, and you're making that more and more clear. How about this? The entire thing of the goddess or the Virgin itself or Lady Liberty. This is
exactly, my friend. Exactly. Yes, precisely that.
That's what it's about, I guess.
Well, I am absolutely 100% convinced that is what it's about. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Tell us about the. You mentioned earlier the green Greenwich connection, I should say, and we have been into this whole, as you say, the maritime thing.
Yes.
Can we kind of first of all tell us about some of the Greenwich connections that you did and your theories about it and so forth.
Yeah, well, that again, I mean, I'm really not a very helpful interviewee here, but. I mean, all I can really talk about anything I do is just how I feel at the time. I'm awkward like that, I guess. But all I can say about Greenwich is that it's been a place which has become a sort of obsession in my life over the last maybe 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. And I'm lucky. I mean, I live in London. I live in southwest London, and it's really a fairly simple sort of question of getting out there over on the A2. Now, if you look at the A2, it's this ancient street that's known as Watling Street. It's a very ancient track, my friend. Mm-hmm. It is not it is not Roman. Okay, that's an important thing to stress. It's much more ancient than the Romans. It's simply that they laid it and they extended it.
Okay.
But I'm fascinated by sort of ancient tracks. Ley lines, which I guess are certainly connected, but it isn't quite as simple as sort of one being the same as the other. But and all those things, I mean, I get really excited about concepts of ancient Albion.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Albion.
What's that? Tell us about it.
Well, Albion is the name. Is an early name for Great Britain.
Okay.
So people, for example, like Blake, for example, always sort of spoke of Great Britain as Albion. Okay. And someone else who speaks about Albion, who is also a bit of an obsession of mine at the moment, is sort of somebody called Peter Doherty.
Okay, if we were to, I'm trying to, get my head around it, as it were. Is this? Do you think that this has some kind of connection with? We're talking about time, maritime signals. It's about the Greenwich thing, ley lines, all of this.
Yes, that's all good. That's
all good.
Yeah.
Is it an end of time theme running here? End of days, something like that. Something you've been.
End of days is a phrase that has been running around my sort of slightly warped mind for several weeks. End of days is something. I get up in the morning. I practically recite that. I'm inspired by those words. End of days. I think that is. I think that's what we're looking at.
This is Red Eyes Radio. again, one theme that goes through your latest articles, is the Greenwich and the maritime signals theme, and I did want to ask you a little bit about the end of time, or the end of days. First of all, how do you think that this connects with the whole Greenwich theme that you've been following? This is the 0 degree, the prime meridian, as it were.
Absolutely that. Yeah, well, that's a very important factor in the first place, because Greenwich is where time begins, and I just find it something which sort of resonates with me on a poetic level more than anything else, that here is the place where time begins. And so, I feel that there's some kind of correspondence there, that if time begins here, if days start here, then I think it makes sense in some way that, days symbolically only, of course. I'm not talking about a real apocalypse, because I don't believe that, but I'm talking about a symbolic, changing of the guard. And I think that, personally, I think that Greenwich is going to be very, very significant. And I'll tell you one of the reasons why. And this is sort of fed into sort of some of the recent research which we've been doing, and also guys like Matthew Deleuze, my friend, out there in Lancashire, has been doing.
Yeah.
2012.
Yes.
Now, of course, everybody, we all know about 2012. But the important thing is that 2012 is also the year in which London is hosting the Olympics.
That's right.
Yeah. And of course, one of the important sort of venues is going to be sort of Greenwich's Dome. So if we're looking at a possible sort of suspect for the end of days, or for a, as it were, a symbolic sort of start of a new age, then clearly 2012, is important, and equally, with so much international energy being sort of sent London's way at that time, and especially on Greenwich itself, I think that's also something very significant.
So this does imply, I guess, that the guys running the show are aware of this. Do you think?
Yeah, I think they're highly aware. It's an interesting question. I mean, only because as I get more into the occult conspiracy, which is, so what I do primarily, and I think that's where you are as a researcher, and in terms of red ice, which is why I like talking to you, and also why I think your site's an excellent resource, because,
thanks.
Sort of something which keeps coming up is this sort of question of how conscious all this is.
Yeah.
And I personally believe that like so much of what we're seeing, is not necessarily consciously planned, but it's people who are unbeknowingly following an ancient archetype, an ancient blueprint, and it's something which is quite possibly hardwired into our DNA itself.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's something which we see it's something which we see all throughout the ages. It's something which we can find in Holy Scriptures, for example, like as you were mentioning earlier, and it's something equally. It seems to be something which we can find in popular culture. It's this concept of this very ancient, but at the same time endless and timeless game, which is being played out in front of our eyes, and it was played out yesterday, and it will be played out in 2012 and beyond. It's this sense that actually all of us, everything that is in some way interacting with higher intelligence. That life is itself a close encounter of the third kind.
That's nice. I like that. Do you think that this is again then is this a form of you mentioned that a new age in that sense, but is it a kind of I don't know, Aquarian initiation, and at the same time we see the collapse maybe of the old, hence the very...
Oh yes, I think it is going to be a collapse. I mean, I'm sort of not somebody who talks about the end of the world as such, but nonetheless, I think that we in our ordinary workaday sort of physical selves are possibly going to be in for some pretty rough times. But if I could say that, not necessarily here in Great Britain, and I don't think in Northern Europe, in Scandinavia and so on either necessarily. I think there are going to be some cataclysms elsewhere, but I can't speculate on exactly what form they will take.
Sure.
I think nuclear exchange looks fairly likely, but
really?
At the same time, sort of people in the conspiracy field have been talking that up now for at least 2 years, which is how long I've been involved in it.
Yeah,
yeah.
And of course,
and quite possibly for many years longer than that, I think.
Exactly, that what my point there has been going on since the entire Cold War thing has been running, and then we have the Iran thing coming up here now. It seems like, but in a way, it also feels that actually nothing big is happening on that scene as far at least not yet, and I'm thankful for that, of course.
Well, I'm thankful for that. I'm incredibly thankful. And, obviously I hope or I don't literally pray, but I hope and pray that it stays that way.
Yeah.
So we were talking, about 2012, about cataclysms, about this sense of the changing of the guard, as I call it, and things shifting.
If I may ask, what is Britain's part in this then, considering that they have the Olympics, as you say, 2012, they have the Greenwich Meridian. What's Britain's part?
Indeed, and of course many other ancient sites, and of course ancient sites are not unique sort of to Albion, but I'm primarily interested in the ones here. It's a hard one to say. Apart from I get the sense it's Great Britain who are calling the shots. And I think something I was going to, something which you've just reminded me of, which is a very important point in my opinion. All this talk about this new age, about the age of Aquarius. I'm not coming at you, as I hope you can understand, from a new age perspective. I think about, sort of some of the stuff that your regular correspondent Michael Tsarian has to say about the new age, and he says it a lot better than me, and I wholeheartedly, echo a lot of that stuff. Sort of so much that's out there, and I'm not just telling you here, but I'm telling everyone listening. But there's, sort of so much that's out there in that marketplace of spiritual ideas is a scam. In fact, it's not only a scam, but it's actually, in my opinion, quite dangerous. On the surface, and I think here is the most. This is the sort of saddest and sort of evilest fact of all. But on the surface, sort of New Age spirituality seems entirely separate from the old-fashioned so-called prison religions of Islam and Christianity, Hinduism, etc. And yet, of course, as anybody who's been inside sort of might tell you, it's almost exactly the same kind of concepts and structures which are in place there as well.
I see what you mean.
Yeah, and so one of the most important changes, if it's going to happen, it is not necessarily about 2012. And again, this is all intuitive. This is not fact, but this is my take on it. But one of the things we have to do is actually get rid of all sense of externally imposed structures, all of them, and that includes even conspiratorial structures. In some cases, if they no longer fit the bill. And it's this extremely sort of radical reimagining of all notions of authority. Yeah, and we come to understand that the only authority that's worth its salt is our own, is ourselves. We are our own gurus.
Yeah. I totally agree with that, Yeah. Definitely. It's
and sorry if I can just sort of just wax on a little bit longer, but earlier I was talking about being the outsider in life, and it's something that in a sense I've struggled with, but